come back to before I sort of proceed. And what is that?
I had a question earlier, and we didn't get to it. When you go through those 5 processes
Of grief? Uh-huh.
Nowhere in there do I hear the word forgiveness.
Right.
And I have a feeling that there's a component there.
The moment that you get ready for the ceremony, which is characterized by gratitude and blessing, that's the same thing as sort of saying forgiveness in a way, I think. I don't write about or teach forgiveness because I don't know enough about it to do so. I do know a little bit about blessing and a little bit about gratitude, and I know that that would be very difficult to get to those if there wasn't some implicit forgiveness going on. Part of the reason why I've never used that word very much in over 20 years is because some of the atrocities and trauma that I've had people present, I never want to convey to them that forgiveness is a must-get-to state for them. Does that make sense? So I don't talk about it much, but I do believe in it. I certainly have got there from my father. I'm 90% there with my mother, and certainly 100% there with my ex-wife. And yeah. It takes what it takes. Yes, sir.
Where does passivity come from?
Let me give you.
Is shame a substrate for passivity?
Let me give you. Where does it come from? I'll give you 2 major ways, real quickly: the abandoned child and the smothered child. That's the groundwork for passivity. The abandoned child and the smothered child. They end up the same way, passive. There's been so many studies. That abandoned child, they wait and they wait and they wait and they wait. Now the problem with that is most people don't understand abandonment in terms of child psychology. And in terms of child psychology, a 30-minute gap of unattention in a child's life at a particular time can leave them passive for the rest of their life, angry, full of rage. Because what is 30 minutes in adult time can be 2 eternal lifetimes if it's at the wrong time. And it doesn't take many times. I say, and I have said this for many years, every person that I've ever worked with was abandoned. Every person I've ever worked with has been abandoned. We just can't remember it. We have no memory of it. Most abandonment occurred before we had language to describe it. And so when people try to remember it, they try to remember it with a part of the brain that's attached to language, and they can't come up with it. But when your mother or father didn't come when you pooped in your pants and you were hungry and you caught your arm in between those terrible little cribs because they were on the phone, the pot was boiling over, and you were screaming, even though that only took 6 minutes and 22 seconds, the body feels abandoned. So abandonment and smothering are the 2 major causes, as I've found and worked with, of passivity. The parent who is constantly hovering over their child is called helicopter parenting. Who's constantly hovering over the child will very likely produce a passive child or passive adult as much as somebody who was left on the doorsteps of the orphanage. Yes, sir. What we're doing for those that you just came in, we're taking questions and comments about what I've said already before I launch into what I'm going to say, okay? Yes, sir.
This question of you said, do you love me?
Uh-huh.
Now, what I've always said is, do you still love me?
Uh-huh.
And I sense that there's something happening there. What does that say about me?
Well, there's still probably a little fear of abandonment. Do you still love me is almost code for, are you ready to abandon me yet? Could be, This is why as a psychotherapist, I have great job security, because it's going to take a while to answer that question. Yes.
I struggle with that. Do you love me? In my relationship of 39 years, in other words, I pretend.
Uh-huh.
It's important. I'm trying to pump.
Uh-huh.
And yet there's an integrity issue about, God, I wonder if I really do.
Right. Well,
And then when we're really pissed, and the shit hits the fan, after all these years, my wife will accuse me that I never really.
never did. Right.
So the part of me is kind of broken or questioning.
Yeah.
Flip it around, we don't fuck with that.
That's right.
How do you like to be?
Right.
Then I can handle that.
Uh-huh.
Figure this one out.
Uh-huh.
Do the
Fair.
best I can.
Uh-huh.
In fact, the other thing is I do the best I can.
Right. Yes, sir.
I walk around the house, I'll say things like, nobody loves me, even the dog.
Right.
And my mother told me that her father used to walk around.
Wow. Well, we all marry our fathers and mothers. We just rotate them in and out. First marriage is usually to mom, second marriage is to dad. And then when you get enough therapy, you marry one that reminds you of both of them. It's just a joke. It's just a joke. Don't take this literally. It's just a fucking joke. We'll do conflict here at 5 o'clock. No. What?
The thing that came up for me when you were talking was that it's not me asking, do you love me, but it's like I don't know what I would need.
Okay.
Ask that question to me. What do you need from me?
Okay. I'm going to give you four statements that will change that for the rest of your life when you take time and remember to do it. Ready? Here's the 4 statements that will pull you out of passivity in almost any conflict, confrontation, or just simply a conversation with people that you care about. And they're very simple. They have to be, I'm from Alabama. If I was from Harvard and New York, I would make these much more difficult. But, here's the first one. And all you got to do is fill in this blank. Me and my wife use these a lot, and several of my friends do. First statement, this is what I want. Regarding this particular situation, or regarding this issue, or regarding this conflict, this is what I want. Now, want, in this particular case of coming out of using the tool to come out of passivity, this is best case scenario, this is my fantasy, this is my wish, this is what I want. Okay? But I'm going to tell you right up front, this is what I want. The second statement in this sequence is, but this is what I need. This is what I need regarding this conflict or this situation. And these needs are non-negotiable, not debatable. This bottom line, this is air, water, love, sex, tenderness, whatever. First one is what I want. Second one is this is what I need. Third one, though, this to me was one of the best pieces in the sequence. This is what I will not do to get what I want and need. I want you to be clear. I want you to be clear. This is what I want. I want you to be clear. This is what I need. But I also want you to be equally clear. This is what I will not do to get what I want and need. And then the fourth one is, and last is, this is what I will do to get what I want and need. This is what I will do. And I want to be as clear about that one as I am the other 3. This is what I will do. You can count on it. You can take it to the bank. I'll follow through. Now, this also leads me into one of the other solutions to passivity, and And again, I want to be clear now. Again, this is a little caveat I got to throw in. For instance, next weekend, I'm doing a 3-day workshop on this, not a 2-hour one. So I'm making it black and white. I'm making it cut and dried. And you have to take it with a grain of salt and know that that's what I'm doing because of the time structure that I have to play with. Not 3 days, 2.5 hours tops, okay? So here's the second component that comes out of that, that 4-step process. The sooner you get rid of the word you, the sooner you'll come out of passivity. Now, this is an old recovery thing, but they never took it as far as I try to teach it, write about it, and take it. When you're in conflict and confrontation, especially around issues in relationship or at work or with your family or with your kids, for every you say, you will pay. For every you say, you will pay. That's just the way it works. There's something about that 3-letter word that should be a 4-letter word. Watch this. You. Born-again Christians respond in their head with, fuck you, to that. Just the word you. As soon as that comes out of the mouth, I have now put myself in a passive place. And you better jump into an active place. But I'm going to wait here, just by saying the word you, until you do. Yes, sir.
Isn't by saying, you saying, I don't feel that you are treating me fairly, let's say, saying that,
Yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I'm saying it black and white again. Any of this you can say, but listen to the phrase. Now, again, nobody's going to agree with all that I'm going to say today. What was it you said? You what?
Let's say you're saying,
Yeah, give me the example.
I don't feel that you have been treating me fairly.
Okay, now listen to this. I don't feel that you have been treating me fairly. Now close your eyes and watch your bodies. I want to say that I don't feel treated fairly. Now, it won't register for everybody. What did you get there, bald man? You got it. What'd you get? I don't know your name. I'm sorry. I'm just kidding with you. But what'd you get? You got it.
Their statement about you.
Uh-huh.
And there's a whole more universe than just me.
You know what 9 people out of 10 will say to that second one? Tell me more. Have I done something? Am I not doing something? Yeah. You felt comfortable. That's the word. You didn't need to defend. Well, it is kind of confrontational, but it's comfortable. And I'm not trying to make all confrontation comfortable. And I got to tell you, I don't use this same stuff all the time. But in terms of coming out of passivity, that's all I'm doing here today is just giving some tools and some ideas about that. But the word is comfortable there, and 9 people out of 10, instead of being defending, but if I say, you know what, you haven't been treating me well lately. Now that person has to tell me how wrong I am about that. They almost have to. Now, the fact that if you're in a completely, now follow this, because I'm not going to talk much about this, but I am going to say a word or two about it. If I'm in an adult state, if I'm in my neocortex and prefrontal lobe, and you say to me, John, you have not treated me fairly, I'll probably be okay with that. But if I'm in a regressed state, if I'm exhausted, if I'm tired, if the kids have kept us up all last night, and if the paycheck didn't come that we were expecting to pay the bills, and you say, You have not been treating me fairly lately. Okay? Now I'm in fight, flight, or freeze. Fight, flight, or freeze. See? The bills aren't getting paid. The kids kept me awake. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. And now you want to do this? And that's why I say, I joke about it, but as soon as the you comes out of the mouth, the psychic response is fuck you. Fuck you, man. Goddamn, I've been up with the kids all fucking night. The paycheck didn't come. Fuck you. You want to talk about this now and indict me for a crime that I didn't even fucking know I committed.
That's good.
Yeah? Yeah.
What about when you're on the receiving end of you
Yeah.
comments?
That's what I mean, yeah. You just shut down. Or go away.
So what's the way to handle it in a more mature way when you're on the receiving
When you're on the receiving end and you're still in your prefrontal lobe neocortex, here's 4 ways. I'll give you 4 ways. These are the 4 least said words in any confrontation or conflict. The 4 least said. Number 1, stop. I'll say 5,000 words trying to say that, but I won't say it. Stop. Second word, no. I'll say 10,000 words trying to convey that to you, but I won't say no. No. I won't say enough, but I'll talk to you for an hour and a half trying to say enough. That's 3. That's right. Now you're good with this. Yeah. And then the 4th, the 4th is no more. Now all these are very active statements, but the passive man can't pronounce the words. You thinking something?
No, in other words, like, hold on.
Hold on. Yeah, that's good. Stop, enough, no more, hold on, wait. I can't do this. Yeah. I'm going to take a walk. I'll be back in an hour and see if I'm able to continue the conversation. But instead, most people, now this goes back, several of you have come in late, but it goes back to the thing that if you are afraid, if you have been abandoned and you're afraid of being abandoned again, you'll talk 3 hours to create the illusion of connection that the words stop, no more, or enough might re-stimulate the memories of having been abandoned. Does that make sense? If I say stop, I also have to be prepared to follow through with it. See? And that's why I say most people don't ever say it. They'll scream it, but they don't mean it. So here's the next little piece of coming out of passivity. I mentioned it the other day. I'll say it again real quickly and explain it. One you already know about. Everybody knows about it. Everybody uses the word. But the other one is not so well known. Matter of fact, in all the books on the subject, it's not even mentioned. And when it is, it's not explained accurately. 2 things that will bring people out of passivity and reduce anger and rage every time is there it came back. It left for a minute. Boundaries and limits. Boundaries is the one that there's a dozen books written about in self-help and psychology. There's no book written on limits. That's what I'm going to go into now, and that's one reason why I write about it in my book, is because people always say, well, what the hell's the difference? Many clinicians will use the 2 words interchangeably as if they meant the same thing. Just like I said the day before yesterday, they'll use accountability and responsibility as if it means the same thing. It doesn't. A boundary, I'm going to give you the fast, dirty version so I can get to the limits part. Boundary is this is how close you can come to me. That's just, and then you put in the blank. Emotionally, physically, sexually, informationally. This is how close you can come to me. You know, if you start telling me about your first wife, you know, I may say, I can't talk about it now. You know, that's as close as you can come. Okay? But limits, this is the one that really throws the passive person into a kind of a crazy place. Passive people will not identify their limits, but will expect those around them to know what they are. A limit is, this is how far I'll go along with you. Yeah, the passive part is, you're supposed to know how far I'll go along. Right. The active coming out of the passivity is, I need to know how far I'll go along with you. Like, you come up and you start telling me a good joke. Great, I'm going to listen. Okay? Then you tell me another joke. Okay, great, I'm going to listen. But then I want to leave. I don't want to hear no more. But I listen to 3 more jokes. And then when I see you coming across the campus, I avoid you. Okay? See, I don't know what my limits are. A woman called me the other day and she said, I'm so pissed off at my son I could kill him. I said, what is it all about? She said, well, I told him I would put him, he's got a drug and alcohol problem, I would put him through 2 rehabs and 2 rehabs only, and after that he was on his own. I said, so how did that go? She said, I've put him through 4. I said, so you're really pissed off at him for not knowing what your limits are. And she said, oh. I said, how could he know what your limits are? You don't know what they are. You said they were 2, but you did 4. But you're pissed off at him. See? A limit is, this is how far I'll go along with you. Okay? Honey, I can do this conversation for 30 minutes. Now, you know what boundaries and limits do for people? They make everybody feel safe. The one who sets them and the one who appreciates them. Now, I'm going to go back to that you thing for just a minute, and then we'll take a couple more questions. I got some more stuff to say about other solutions to this. But once you try to set a boundary or limit with the word you, you're actually doing passive manipulation and control. Passive manipulation and control. If you keep talking to me, could I stop right there? Do you hear the threat in just that amount of words? You hear it? If you keep talking to me, see, that's not setting a boundary. That's putting an ultimatum. And you haven't even finished saying what's going to happen yet. Right? Now, the way that we talk, the way that I talk, I should say, the way that I talk is full of passivity all the time, because it's what I grew up with, it's what I heard, it's what I was immersed in, and it takes a lot of thought to not fall back into it. I have to have what I call a TMM, a temporary moment of maturity. At this conference, so far, I've had 2 of them. I wish we had a videotape them just to show that it was possible. Yeah. Most of the time, a lot of the time, when I'm tired, stressed, exhausted, worn out, I'm not very mature. I'm not in my neocortex. I'm in fight, flight, or freeze mode. And many of you have probably felt one of those three or some combination of those three since you got here. Fight, flight, or freeze. Okay? Some people are in passive places. They're not necessarily passive people, but they're in passive places in their life or around certain issues. Some people are in passive places for decades around sexuality. Some people are in passive places for decades around finances. But then in 5 other areas, they're very active, very assertive, you see. So all this talk and all this stuff about passivity is simply just to help identify the areas which you might still be demonstrating some passivity, you know, whether it's in relationship or work or whatever. Okay? Now, I saw some more hands, so I'll take some more questions. Yeah.
Actually, I have a lot of questions, but I don't want to exceed my limits.
Okay. Well, I'll let you know what mine are if we get
I'm
to.
guessing. But what came up when you were talking about the use, the word "you."
Mhm.
The facility I work in, we have a particular group we call "When You I Feel."
And that is a huge step in the right direction from where it used to be, which was you're an asshole. See, we're moving in a good direction. Yeah, that's a very common recovery tool. When you I feel. When you don't come home on time like you said you would, I feel sad, abandoned, hurt. What my job has been teaching recovery folks and other folks is why not just pull the you out? See, I like to be on time. Now listen to that. I like to be on time. When you are late for a meeting, you hear everybody begin to go, oh, fuck. He's doing it in that great psychological way, but it still is about to go right here, right? It's a great step forward, but still an unnecessary step. Because what most people want to know is, well, let me kind of throw it back this way. Passive people, and me on my bad passive day, does this. I do this. I'm going to tell you about you. What you should have done, what you shouldn't have done, and why you did what you did. And then when I get finished, you're going to tell me how I didn't say that right. And that I shouldn't have said it at all. And why I said it the way I said it. And then when you're done, it's my turn again. And this can go on for 3.5 hours. And at the end, I don't know any more about you. And you don't know any more about me. And we call that marriage. For 25 years, I'm going to tell you about you. What you should have done, why you said that to your mother at the holidays, why you let your dad talk to you that way. Am I being too exaggerant here? And then when I get finished, you're going to say, well, that's the way you let your mother talk to you every time we go to your house. And then I'm going to say, no, it isn't. I don't let my mother talk to me anyway like you let your father talk to you. I mean, I think the reason why you let your father talk to you that way, because I am your therapist. I mean, your husband. I forget, you know. Right? I'm going to tell you about you, then you're going to tell me about me, then I'm going to tell you about you. And there's nothing more passive than that. Nothing more passive than that. Yes, sir.
Can you talk a little bit about the four least said words in any conflict?
The four least words said, no, no more, stop, and enough. Huh?
So I feel like sometimes a kind of mannish thing to do is as soon as a conflict's introduced, it's saying no.
No, I'm not saying that.
Can you talk about, like, sometimes I think the limits are false.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people are, well, let's just find out. Though this conference has never been noted for it particularly, but how many of you still will admit in public that you're slightly to greatly conflict avoidant? Yeah, 2/3 of the room. In other words, if you got a conflict in Minnesota, you'll go by way of Mississippi. And with the hopes that by the time you go to Mississippi and get back, they'll be dead. Right? And then you don't have to conflict with them at all. Well, I was going to do this conflict in Minnesota, but I had to go to Mississippi, and by the time I got back, they were dead. How many? A lot of people go around it. I still have a tendency to do it. That's one reason why I majored in the work, is because these are problems. Always have been. I'm not as conflict avoidant as I used to be, but then again, it doesn't seem like the world is conflict oriented in some ways as it used to be. I was thinking about, now I know what you said last night about not wanting conflict, but a guy came up and said afterwards, he said, man, I don't know how to help that guy see conflict. I said, well, what you do is you buy him a time machine and you send him back to the Minnesota conference 15 years ago. And buddy, you would have seen some of the best examples of how to deal with conflict of anybody you could ever see. It used to go on all afternoon, every day, if I remember correctly, a conflict hour, And I said, take a time travel trip and you would see it done in ways that you wouldn't believe, and that I learned a tremendous amount from. A lot of us have worked on our issues, grown up, gotten passive. I don't know. But it has changed. But I think it's what I told another person last night is part of the reason why I understand conflict hour is not so necessary now is so many people have learned how to say what they want and need and pissed off at in the group as it's going along, as opposed to bottling it up and waiting. That's just my perception. But the other part is that Robert's changed. If you could have seen Robert in the 1980s, he was looking for a fight, right? And then you add Hillman and Meade to the mix, right? And it was just like, come on, motherfuckers. We came here. Now, come on, motherfucker. Kind of an exaggeration, but you get the point. What's that? Remember? Wasn't it sort of like that, it was really something. Somebody would stand up in the back and say, Robert, I'd like to say something. What's that? Well, I wish I could have had a father like you. And Robert would say, everybody pick him up and throw him out the fucking window. Now, he might say thank you. Seriously, he might not, but he might. And I'm just using that as an example. What's that? Somebody said? I keep hearing these conversations. I'd like to hear. But I'm just rattling on. What you got, bud?
As you bring this up, I guess I think a little bit about, you talked about, there's setting boundaries, but then you also have ultimatums.
Right.
And part of, I guess, what I've experienced is to be able to separate out the two.
Right.
And I know for myself, I get the two mixed up.
Okay.
Like personally, I was presented with a scenario of, from my wife, either you let me
Okay, let me do this real quick, because I don't have much time. I'm kind of rattling on too much here a little bit. First point, a boundary that can't be defended is not a boundary. It's just a bunch of New Age therapeutic words. A boundary that can't be defended is not a boundary. It's just a bunch of psychological jargon that people have learned to say. What? For example, this man said one time, I was doing a workshop on boundaries and boundaries and limits one day, a whole day long. And he said, well, I don't agree with you. I set boundaries with my mother every Sunday when I go see her, but she just completely ignores them. And I said, then they're not boundaries. And he said, see, that's what I mean. You're telling me that I don't set boundaries, and I'm telling you I do. And I said, well, I'm telling you, and I got a little confrontational. I was tired. I said, I'm telling you they're not boundaries, because if they were, she couldn't ignore them. And he said, well, she does. I said, all right, give me an example, please. He said, every Sunday I go over and I have dinner with her, and I sit down and I put on my plate what I would like to eat, and then she puts on my plate what she wants me to eat. And I said, and so what do you do? He says, I set a boundary with her. I say, Mother, I don't want you to put food on my plate. And I said, okay, and then what happens? She puts it on anyway. And I said, then it's not a boundary. I said, it's a preference. It's a request, but it's not a boundary. He said, well, I think you're wrong. I said, okay, see that fence right out there? That rope fence, we'll say, man, that wasn't what I said, but I said, see that rope fence out there? I want you to walk up to it, and I want you to walk through it. And he said, well, that's impossible. I said, that's right, because you can't ignore boundaries. He said, well, physical ones. I said, no, even emotional ones. And I said, so we're going on like this for another few minutes. He said, well, what do you want me to do? Just take the goddamn food and throw it in her face? I said, no, that's rage, and that's another workshop. Because most people think that the only way boundaries can be defended is through rage or through walking away and distancing themselves, because they can't. Now, that man would go into a regression every Sunday at dinner. And for those, I'm going to give you 3-4 quick definitions of regression for those that hadn't heard it. Number 1, feeling small or little. Now I want you to raise your hand, because I'll raise mine, if during these last 3 days you've ever felt small or little. Regression is a universal part of the human condition. It's not a psychosis. It's not a neurosis. It's part of the human condition, and people go into regression from time to time depending on a number of factors. Okay? Second way of thinking of regression is feeling less than a powerful adult. Less than a powerful adult. 1 minute you feel like a grown, mature, capable adult, and then somebody looks at you a certain way or says something, and now you don't feel so powerful anymore. Third one is the phrase, I lost it. I lost it. That's a way to think of regression. I lost it. What did you lose? You lost your ability to stay in your adult prefrontal lobe of your neocortex, and you went to the midbrain where you fought, flew away, or froze. I lost it. Yesterday, me and my son was having this wonderful, mature conversation. I don't know what he said, but boy, did I lose it. And I said things, oh my God. If you don't remember anything else about regression, remember this. Most regression equals regret. When I lose it, feel small or little or less than powerful, I very often will say things or do things that I may regret for days, weeks, or decades. Most regressions equal regret. I'll never forget the day I got in a major regression with my wife. I took off my wedding ring and threw it at her. I'll never forget that day. I've regretted that day 1,000 times, even though I've apologized for it. That's a fight, flight, or freeze mode. A lot of different ways to think about it, but passivity is a constant pull back into our history and into our past. And so we're regressing a lot of the time. Yes, sir. There is, and I can't think of the fucking fourth one for the life of me right now, but it'll come in just a minute, I'm pretty sure.
So if the guy can't defend his boundaries,
Okay.
by rage or distancing,
He can do it with about 100 different other ways if he's not regressed. Now, how that came about in that particular still setting, I asked 12 or 15 other people how they would defend that same boundary with their mother. And just like if I asked the question today, y'all could come up with answers too. Well, I do this, or I try that, or I do this, or I do that. But see, that was his regressive trigger. And when you're out of the neocortex, in the neocortex and the prefrontal lobe, you have choice, you have rational, logical, reasonable behavior. But when you leave that and go into a regressed state, you only have three choices: fight, flight, or freeze. So if you're not getting triggered and regressed in this way, you can come up with ways to defend. Now I'm going back to the fella there. My second point is this. So first is a boundary that can't be defended is not a boundary. But the second part of this is that if you tell fellow adults what the consequences are, 99 adults out of 100 will take them as threats and ultimatums. You tell children what your boundaries and limits are, and then you tell them the consequences so that they can choose to ignore, pursue, disregard, or respect. But if you tell another adult, these are my boundaries and here's the consequences, they're going to feel small, little, less than powerful, and probably lose it on you. So you need to know what they are. You need to know what they are. And you need to know what you will and will not do to defend them. But you do not need to say, listen, here's my boundaries, and if you cross them, here's what's going to happen to you. Well, that's the same thing as saying, fuck you. I'm the boss, I'm the daddy, and you're not. Yes, sir. Yes, be glad to, very quickly. Anger is a primary feeling and an emotion, always has been, always will be. Most clinicians and authors have relegated it to a secondary emotion because they are confusing it with its ugly, very nasty fifth cousin, rage. Rage is an action or a behavior that numbs feelings and emotions. Rage is an action or a behavior that numbs people's emotions. Cocaine will numb emotions. Excessive alcohol will numb emotions. Rage will numb emotions, and it's legal, plentiful, and readily available. And you don't even have to leave home to get it. There's men in this room, you know who you are, I don't. There's men in this room sometimes when they get scared, really scared, and they don't want to feel scared, and they don't want to look scared, and they don't want anybody to know they're scared, will rage. And for that few moments, they create the temporary illusion that they're anything but scared. Some women will be so hurt and lonely sometimes. Some men will be so sad sometimes that they don't want to feel the loneliness, the sadness, the hurt, the disappointment, so by God, they're going to rage at everybody there is around them and create the temporary illusion that they are not sad or lonely at all. You go out of that goddamn door, you can just keep fucking walking. Now, ain't I powerful? You think I'm scared? You think I'm sad? You think I'm afraid of being abandoned? Fuck you. You go on and walk out that fucking door. You come back, there won't be nothing here. Rage is an action or a behavior used to numb people's feelings.
I know just that there was a quiet after you said that numbness was like, and what I get is how in high school at 3:30 it started to be taught
Yeah.
to those of us who went to wrestling practice.
Or football or
Practice, or basketball practice.
Right.
And it started to be taught, and then I started to learn it.
Right.
And so I could do it to other people.
Absolutely. We mastered it.
And then I saw the whole cyclical part of it.
Yeah, we mastered it. Remember when Mel Gibson got caught a few years ago ranting and, pulled over and all that stuff? I got so many calls, thank God, but I got so many calls from interviewers. Why is he so angry? Why is he so angry? What's he angry about? I'd say he ain't angry about anything. What do you mean? I'd say he's full of rage. He's got rage in him. Well, what's the difference? See, this is why many anger management programs in the country don't work, is because they're trying to treat an emotion that is basic, human, and God-given, and they don't know how to treat the actions or behaviors that got them in this so-called anger management program. And besides, when you go to an anger management program, not only do you have to deal with rage, you have to deal with resentment, embarrassment, shame, and guilt, and anger at having been sent to an anger management program. And most 6-session anger management programs aren't equipped to deal with all that. Powerlessness. I don't feel powerful anymore. But yeah. Y'all done that? You just kind of go, where the fuck did I go? Let me tell you a term that I didn't get in my last book on anger, and it's the last book I'm writing on anger, and I've only got 3 more anger workshops to do this year, and I ain't saying another fucking word about it, because I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off. What you're describing in road rage, from road rage to the daily little things that some of us get enraged about, is to be termed what is called interruption rage. Interruption rage. And this begins in early childhood, that we are interrupted in hundreds, if not thousands, of natural processes. And the body remembers all these. So then 40 years later, now watch my hands because I don't know how to do it any other way, whether it's driving or conversing and you interrupt it, I go into a rage because of the backlog of rages that are being triggered at that moment. Oh my God, this is just like, you got it? See? This is just like when I was telling my dad I needed to go pee, and I started peeing, and he made me stop right there and put my penis back in my britches and say, you wait until we get home. So 40 years later, you're going home, and a car pulls out in front of you and cuts you off. It interrupts your forward motion. It's called interruption rage. I'd give anything if I could have. I mean, there's more to it, of course, but I just didn't get it in that last book, and that's it. But does that make sense to y'all? Think about all the times that you've really flown into a rage, and you'll find a good number of them. Something was interrupted. Something. Yes, sir.
What you just said there, the example of rage was so very powerful in the way it came out. Was that something that was, in a tank there that you were just, you pushed a button and it popped out, or was that an act?
There's an act.
That was a very good act.
I'm a good actor. Maybe I'm a little pissed off. I don't know. I won't say that I've gotten all my rage out. I was at an anger workshop with my wife not long ago, and somebody said, she just happened to be there for the part of the day, and somebody said, can I ask your wife a question? And I went, oh, God. I said, well, you can ask her, and she said what she said. Can I ask you, is John, does he practice what he preaches about this rage? And please, baby Jesus. Please, baby Jesus. Just let her say, I'll be good if she says 50% of the time. Please, baby. I don't pray to him. In those situations, I always pray to the little baby Jesus. And she said about 85% of the time. Boy, I felt so I knew she was lying, but it felt so good. It's a great lie, Yes, sir.
Are there any techniques to help neutralize or diffuse some of that stored rage?
Yes, sir. It's unfortunate, and I don't do it anymore. I've trained lots and lots of people to do it, and I used to do it when I would come to these things. Most people, especially men, have to find a physical way to reduce the rage. Talking about it doesn't work for a lot. Writing about it works for some, but most people have to physically exorcise the rage out of them. And that's what I had to do. I hung punching bags, I screamed, I pounded, I pushed, I shoved, I tore, I threw hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, and then I helped people do it for years and years and years, and then I got tired, and needed to move on. But the physicality of it is part because the rage, the unexpressed rage, locates in the body and in the tissue and in the cells and in the back and in the heart and in the voice and in the jaw, that if you don't find a way to get it out, it can really have really serious, but I just can't do it anymore. I mean, in terms of facilitating it, I still do some for me, Breathing, deep breathing. Some people can do it through holotropic breath work. Some people do it. Everybody has to do it their own way, but for me, it was physical. If that little book over there, Facing the Fire, is still out, there's a bunch of exercises that you can do in that to try. Now, let me give you, real quickly, I'm going to do a 4-minute talk on anger and rage as a way out of passivity, and then I got a couple more things, and then I got to turn to almost another subject before I complete my time here today. I'm going to give you 9 things that passive people do when they think they're expressing anger. I'm going to give you 9 things passive people do. You hear me emphasizing that? Not feel, they do them to others. When they think they're expressing their anger. When they think they're actually being assertive and active, these are what they do. Number one, shaming. Shaming. I can't believe you would bring in a fucking report card looking like this. Now, I'm just telling you how I feel. Blaming. You know, if you had have only got into counseling when I first asked you to, we wouldn't be in this situation. Demeaning. I don't think no matter how many times, son, I show you how to do this, that you're ever going to be capable of getting it. Demoralizing. You know, it was your sister who got all the intelligence in your goddamn family. Criticizing. Whew. You're not going to wear that to bed, are you? Preaching. Anybody in here ever preached the gospel according to you? Yeah? No, yeah. Every once in a while you just flip that fucker out, point to chapter and verse to convert the heathens around you to your point of view. Right? Now again, preaching can be a thing. Criticism is a natural thing. But I'm talking about when you're using it these ways. Does that make sense? Teaching. Bill, I can see you don't understand a word Robert Bly is saying. So at the break, I'll explain it in a way that even you can understand. Which always elicits a fuck you. And then judging is the one that I was doing earlier. This is what you did wrong. This is why you did what you did. This is why you shouldn't have done it. Right? And then the last one is analyzing. Analyzing. It's one of the worst forms of rage that can be perpetrated onto your kids or your parents or your partners, is analyzing. Shaming, blaming, demeaning somebody, demoralizing them, criticizing, preaching, teaching, judging, and analyzing. Honey, are you mad at me? No, baby. You know I haven't had a feeling since the Nixon administration. But I am trying to figure you out. I'm trying to figure out. I met your mama. And she's a mess, so I know where some of this is coming from. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Here's a few more, just for good behavior. Sarcasm. How many of you are masters of it? Put downs. Put downs. One-upsmanship. You think you had it bad, son? Let me tell you what bad is. You think you had it bad? You didn't have nothing compared to what I had. You had to walk 3 blocks to school, and you complain about that. I lived up there in Minnesota, and we had to walk to school to New York. We didn't even have no schools. Yeah, without any, without, at least you had shoes. We didn't even have feet back then. One-upsmanship, put down, sarcasm, jokes. Jokes at somebody's expense where everybody's laughing except the one person that you made the joke about. And then as soon as you see that they're not laughing, you have to say, but I was just joking. Now, it doesn't mean that you have rage at them. It just means that you have rage built up and that this is an outlet. Okay? Manipulation, lies, and gossip. Yeah, that and sarcasm, put down. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's right. It happens a lot. And if you look at, which you shouldn't, and I don't much, but if you look at all the sitcoms on television, sarcasm, put-downs, jokes, one-upsmanship, demeaning, demoralizing, criticizing, passing it off as humor. It makes me want to vomit. Yeah, absolutely. 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 All of them. Yeah. Mostly against men. Yeah, that's right. If you do it to a woman, you're a sexist motherfucker. But if you do it to your buddy, you're just a guy. You know, I don't like it, and I do it with my very closest friends. I can do it some, but I have very strict limits on how much I'll let it be done to me. You know, like if somebody's kind of making me the butt of a joke, I'll do one or two, and then I'll say, you know, I need you to stop now. That's enough. You know. Now, just on a personal note, and then I'm going to do one other piece about this. When the woman in The Flying Boy that I wrote about 25 years ago left, the day that she left, I asked her why she was leaving me, and her response was very serious, very serious. She was crying when she said it. She said, "You're one of the angriest men I've ever known." And my response was, "I've never hit you, slapped you, pushed you, or shoved you." And then I threw in my little joke. And I've got a college education, and coming from Alabama, I should be anybody's catch. And she looked at me and said, "See, that's what I'm talking about. You got to make a joke, a little sarcastic remark. You asked me, I told you." Now, just listening to this short part of this talk today, what she really meant was I was more full of rage, because all these things that I just listed was my standard way of talking to her and others that I supposedly cared about. Dad would use the N-word. And I'd say, "Dad, you know, do you fucking know who Martin Luther King is? Do you know what Rosa Parks did?" Now, my dad, who's almost completely illiterate, see, I've got to shame him. I've got to demean him. See? You understand what I'm saying? But I thought I was telling him how I felt. All right? So, one guy said to me the other day, I was doing this presentation a little bit more in depth, and there's actually 18 things that I list in the book, shaming, blaming, demeaning. And he held up a book and he looked at it and he said, "All right, if you take these 18 things away, what the fuck am I going to say?" He said, "This is my daily bread and butter stuff right here. This is the way I talk to my employees, my wife, my dog. What the hell am I going to say?" Yeah, I said, "You're going to have to learn how to express it appropriately, but one of the key ways to doing that is you got to get the rage out of your body and out of your brain and out of your heart as much as you can, and the more you do, the less you'll do these things, and the quicker and easier it'll be able to say things like, you know what, I'm very angry right now, and what is happening here at the office is not working for me at all." How do you know it's anger? Again, the difference between anger and rage. Anger takes moments and minutes at the most, and then we're done. Now let's go eat. Rage takes forever and forever and forever, and nobody wants to eat lunch with you afterwards. All right, real quickly. Somebody asked me to do this specifically yesterday, so I'm going to address it. Actually, 2 people did, so I'm going to do it real quickly. This term that has been overused, misused, and misunderstood, and now discarded as if it's no longer relevant, is one of the key things to not only understand fully, but to deal with as completely as possible on a regular basis if you really want to come out of passivity, and that is this thing called codependency. There is codependency at this conference. There is codependency at my house. There's codependency in the airport. There's codependency every fucking place you go. And all you got to do is really, really get what it is, and then work with it for the rest of your fucking life. And here's the two definitions that hopefully will be helpful to you, and I'll be glad to talk about them later individually with you if I have time. And I'm going to tell you in just a minute why I don't have very much time at this particular conference, so people will understand a little bit where I'm coming from, because I've gotten a couple of, or more than a couple of comments about why I'm not here too much, but working with my own codependency in that issue. But here's codependency in a nutshell. The codependent passive person. I'm so afraid to tell you what I really feel and think and need for fear of how it might make you feel or think, so I won't tell you. I'll say it again, this time a little slower. The codependency, the codependent passive person. Codependency. I'm so afraid to tell you what I really feel, what I really think, or what I really need, for fear of how it might make you feel. So I won't tell you. And then when you die, or I die, right before we do, we will wonder what would have happened if I had only said. I'm going to say the definition again, and I'll give you one more definition from codependency. Codependency, I'm afraid, underline the word afraid, I'm afraid to tell you what I really feel, or what I really think, or what I really need, for fear, there's the fear again, of how it might make you feel. How it might, not how it's guaranteed, how it might. I'm so afraid of how it might make you feel that I won't tell you. And then when you leave me, or I leave you, we'll wonder how it would have gone if I had said, this is how I really feel. This is what I really think. And by God, honey, or lover, or loved one, or friend, or son, God damn, son, this is what I really need. And not be afraid of how it's going to make you feel or think, because you're an adult and you can handle it. And if you can't, you can get some help to handle it. Oh, I'd love to tell my mother. Oh, I'd love to tell my mother, but I'm afraid that it might just kill her. Wow, you're a powerful motherfucker. You mean, well, if your words could kill her, why didn't you just tell her those things when you were 13 and she'd just fucking died? Oh, Your Honor, yes, I'm here for homicide. I killed my mother. And young man, what did you use to kill your mother? I just told her what I felt. She just died right there. Just died on the spot, dead in the dirt, right there. I just said, this is what I need, and she just died. You know. I got to go to prison for that. No, I got to go to the prison of the not said. I got to go into the prison of the not asked for. And I got to remain there passively for 30 years. I remember one of the most profound dreams I had in my 30s was I had it over and over and over and over again. God, it was just haunting. And now, looking back, I can see what it was. It's called the prison of passivity. Every night I'd go into this jail, and I'd be there in this jail, and one night I finally pushed on the door and it opened, and I walked out, and the jailer had my face on him, and the priest had my face on him, and the warden had my face on him, and the jailer said, you know, it's been open all along. And then what really made me cry that next morning was then he handed me the key that he'd always had after he said it always been open. And then I went back in the jail, I shut the door, and I put the key in the lock and turned it and put it in my pocket. And over the years, I've just come to see that for me, that represented so much of my passivity. You know, that it was always open and all I had to do is push and walk out. And instead, I'd go out and then I'd come back in, shut the door, and lock it. Then finally, thank God, one time, then I finally pushed, walked out, and never came back, and I haven't had the dream again since. Second definition of codependency. God damn it. Never have enough time. Second definition of codependency is an unfair, uneven exchange of energy. Codependency is the unfair, uneven exchange of energy. It's codependency is a energetic disease where you're giving more or receiving more that creates an imbalance, and that imbalance always leads to exhaustion and further passivity and rage. Okay. Couple of questions.
Yeah, what do you do about that?
Oh, me. Well, number one is I hate you intelligent people. God. See, if I'd have given that presentation in Alabama, they would have been thinking about what I said for the next 5 years. You know. And they'd be going, you know, fuck me. And y'all go, what's the fucking solution? I got the problem. The unfair, uneven exchange of energy is I'm coming back full circle now to the beginning. You give away energy or you demand energy usually because of the fear of abandonment. Usually because of the fear of abandonment. If I don't give you more energy, you might leave me. But now that I've given you, and see, boy, I can't tell you how many drinks I had to drink years ago. When I give you all the energy I got, now I'm going to go to my first wife and require more than she can possibly provide. And in that space of lack and exhaustion, that's when I would drink. Just me. I'm not talking about you now. I'm talking about me. In that space of loss and exhaustion, I gave too much here and required too much here. And then, out of the emptiness of either or both of those places, my particular addiction, which is one of the greatest manifestations of passivity there is addiction. Mine would be massive quantities of alcohol by the time it was all over. Now, here's how the codependency manifested for me years ago. It was here even, years ago. Codependency. John, Did you have a successful workshop? My evaluation, this is an element of codependency. That's why I'm talking about it, not just revealing personal stuff. The codependent passive person is always engaged in what is called external referencing. And what that means simply is this. I would judge my success or failure of a workshop, as an example of this external referencing codependent stuff, based on how many people laughed, how many people cried, how many people released anger, how many people said you did a good job, how much money I got paid, or whatever. That would drive me to drink. Internal referencing is when people have asked me, and this has been true for a few years, I'm happy to say, when people would say, did you have a successful workshop or not? If I was exhausted, I didn't. I didn't have a successful workshop. You follow the difference? If I was tired, I did have a successful workshop. But if I was exhausted, it was a failure. One is external, one is internal. So my job always at these workshops, no matter where I go and how many I do, is to not cross that line into exhaustion, because then I know that I failed. And if I do too many of those, then I'll participate in my destructive passive behavior of drinking again, and I can't afford to do that. So. Okay.